Can you please call the roll?
Rachel Hendrickson,
Here.
Rick Meinking,
Here.
Roger Beely,
Here.
Richard Dewberry,
Here.
Jennifer Ladd,
Here.
Chad Reed,
Here.
and Karen Shute is absent.
Thank you. Let us do the approval of minutes for March 14th. Before we begin the vote, is there does anybody have any changes, amendments, additions, subtractions?
Madam
None.
Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Rick Meinking made the motion, seconded by Roger Beely. Will you please call roll, Doreen?
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Richard Dewberry,
Yes.
and Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
Thank you. Just as a notice to the folks waiting, item number 6 has been tabled per the request by the developer. So the first person who says this is a shorter meeting is in trouble because that jinxes it. We will move on to item number 5. Krister Mattson requests a sketch plan review for a 3-lot subdivision located at 118 Sawyer Road, assessors map R054, lot number 1 for the developer, for the town.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. As you just mentioned, this is a sketch plan, so it's an informal discussion opportunity for the board and applicant to talk about sort of some high-level points of the project as they prepare their presumably for a formal application that will come forward in the future. As you mentioned, it's a proposal for a subdivision at 118 Sawyer Road, which will result in a 3-lot subdivision on which one of the lots will have an existing home and share a driveway with a new driveway for the 3rd lot. Staff has provided some initial comments in our memo. And I think one of the things that we really focused on was around the standards in the VR4 district, zoning district, which this property is in, has some standards that can be a little tricky to apply on lots of this size. They're really designed much better for larger lots. This is not too dissimilar to a subdivision just down a little bit down the road that the board dealt with within the last year and a half. And so, we just want to recognize that those standards we still need to look at and understand and try to meet to the best of our ability. So certainly, I think that'll be part of what we look at as this goes through. And I guess at that, I'd just say, as always, staff is after this meeting, staff be happy to sit down with the developers again and sort of talk about as they prepare for their formal application. But certainly with that, Madam Chair, we look forward to the board's inputs.
Thank you very much. Now for the developer. If you could go up to the podium, give your name, please.
Hi, I am representing Krister Mattson. My name is Chris Delano, and I'm with Delano Architecture. So we've been working with Krister to, kind of fit this smaller development, as you point out, Jay, into kind of this VR4 standards. But we're looking to just divide this existing single lot into 3 lots. And I've seen, would you like me to do more kind of introduction or?
Yeah, now is the time to tell us really what you want to do.
Okay, excellent, great.
And a sketch plan, as you know, essentially seeks the advice or the feedback from the planning board in terms of where there might be an issue with the ordinances or with designs. And it's geared to help you complete your application for
Excellent.
working with the planning staff.
Great. Well, thank you for that lead in. So in one of the staff comments was to make sure that we review those 7 development standards, which if we go down that list, the first 3 are obviously a challenge to hit. We don't have any streets or blocks or any of that. So we kind of feel like that's not applicable here. But then we move on and that the connectivity of open space on the property for community use, as well as the connectivity of trails and networks to connect other developments seems like where our relevance is. And so as you look at our plan, we've taken, maybe a typical way to address 3 lots on Sawyer Road that's out of character with the VR4 district would be to align 3 houses with a driveway going up to those individual houses. So those houses and maybe a porch or an entry stoop may face Sawyer Road. You'll notice in our submittal that they do not. One of them is an existing house. That one, however, does face Sawyer Road. The other 2 are facing kind of inward. Instead of doing 3 driveways, we're looking to use 1 existing curb cut and then serve 2 homes with the garages towards the back and detached. I'm calling that farmhouse style. So there's an individual house that's facing kind of inward towards the community. And then there's a driveway access. Parking happens in this detached garage to the back. That allows that open space to function more communally rather than be just kind of the private backyard of a typical suburban development. So that is kind of our strategy, I guess, that open space, as you point out, needs to be 10% of the area of this lot. So we would look to do that. 2 developments behind us would be, what is that road? Holbrook Farms Way and the Preservation Way, which looks like it dumps to the back of this property as well. This open space would, although both of those are still, in development and process, we imagine this open space somehow connecting to that larger whole. So I think our main questions in all of this are, since we miss the large or the first 3 development standards, is this development strong enough in all the other standards to go through? So that's kind of the discussion, I guess, we're requesting here.
Why don't you explain what the first 3 standards are so that it'll be clear what you missed and perhaps we can provide you a direction.
Okay. So first village development standards taken from your ordinance, looking for a grid layout of streets. So we don't have a parcel large enough to have any streets, so we are not proposing any grid layouts of streets. The second one is residential development shall include low volume streets. Again, the reference to streets wouldn't be applicable here. Item number 3, the street network in a residential development. Again, the word street, I think is what is not applicable here. Then we move on to 4, and this is when it starts to be relevant, I think, to our development, which is sidewalks and shade trees shall be provided on both sides of the streets within a development and shall connect to the pedestrian amenities of abutting neighborhoods to the extent feasible. That last part, pedestrian amenities of abutting neighborhoods, that's the Preservation Way and the Holbrook Farm Way that we are kind of abutting developments. So that seems, although we don't have the sidewalks and shade trees around streets, we do, I think, relate pretty strongly with those amenities. Then looking to item number 5, the planning board may allow the establishment of private alleyways to provide access to parking facilities. While this one's not directly relevant, it seems like what, in the way that we're trying to organize, trying to share a driveway, trying to organize our parking in a detached farmhouse style garage arrangement that can serve kind of as the utility or alleyways that I think this is referring to. Then moving on to item number 6, this is at least 10% of the net residential acreage of a development shall be allocated as village green space. So that's what we would look to do. That green space towards the back of the property would be sized appropriately to hit that standard. And then development shall be clustered away from wetlands, water courses, and water bodies. This, as you pointed out, we're abutting that wetland to the back. We don't know the extent of that, but it seems like it is close and something that we need to look more deeply into so that we can make sure that we're not treading heavily on that area. So I think those are, I guess, our points of view for each of those standards.
All right, thank you. You may remain there because the board may have some questions for you. This is an item that is open for public comment. Is there anyone in the room that would like to comment on this, or Jay, anyone online?
We do not have anyone online.
And nobody in the room has jumped up. All right, thank you. Let's go to the board. Who'd like to start? All right, go ahead, Rick.
I just have a couple questions. So this is, I think Sawyer Road's public water, public sewer now, okay? Jumped right in.
Yes.
That open space that's in the back, I know you've got it nice as a nice circle there. I'm assuming that's like treed, that's not lawn or anything like that. Like that's just trees, woods, kind of.
Well, it certainly hasn't been explored yet, but I imagine it's some sort of open space where activities can happen. There's plenty of woods in the back. And this comes to that wetland issue about how close we are to that and if we can occupy it in this way or whether it needs to be occupied in a different way.
Yeah, there is a river that runs right behind there, right? Give or take?
I think it's maybe seasonal.
Yeah,
More of a tributary stream, I think.
more of a
than
tributary.
river.
All right, so I'm sure you have all your DEP permissions to build this. Or you'll get them.
Yeah.
So that common area, there's really no access to that one house that's on the left. I mean, he literally has to walk across someone's backyard to get to the common area. So I don't think you need it to be a perfect circle. Honestly, I'd like to see it so that it's some sort of oblong shape or something so that the person over here, because they may or may not use it, depending on if it's just a mosquito infested area. But it should still be, if it's a common area, it should have common, it should be common all three properties, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Rather than this
completely
person
agree.
have to walk across this guy's backyard and have to worry about getting bit by his dog
Mhm.
in order to get to the common, what's called the common area.
Completely agree.
As far as the layout and stuff, I'm not, the two houses on one driveway, I mean, as long as they're all cohabitating nicely, that's fine, I guess. And it is a little tight, but if that's really up to I think, you have to meet the standards. So I would kind of rely on staff to make sure that they were at least meeting the minimum standards for that. Sorry, I was looking that way. Because, yeah, it's just, yeah, that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure, I'll go.
All right, Jen?
I think the point that Rick made about common space among, not just open space, but anything that is to be regarded as common among these three lots. And it sounds like you're on this, but I think thinking of it in that way would be helpful. So the open space is kind of one that presents itself clearly on this plan, but there are other things like, maintenance agreements and, stormwater. So how are you going to handle stormwater among the three properties? Will it be handled a little bit on each property or in a common way among the three lots? somewhere else. And then certainly anytime you have anything that's shared like that, whether it be open space, it's gonna need to be mowed. A shared driveway would need to be plowed and, paved or whatever. And stormwater maintenance would be something too that we'll be looking for down the road in terms of documents on what the thoughts there would be.
So can I pause right there for a second? Those are, yes, with any open space, right, any community, you have to have buy-in, I guess, from each one of these three members, and there needs to be some shared maintenance. You mentioned that should be documented. Is that something that would be part of
Yeah,
our
we would
ask
we
or?
would typically see documents explaining what that looks like,
Okay.
terms and agreements, because otherwise if we didn't, I'm sure you and this project are, perfectly good, but I feel like it's our responsibility as a board to just make sure that that's documented so that if somebody doesn't follow up on that, the town doesn't get a call that says, hey, this big mud puddle in my backyard is, whatever.
Makes sense.
So just making sure that everything's kept up over time.
Okay.
And then I am a little curious. I think I found it would be helpful. I get the sense that you're interested and committed to connecting open space on this property to other properties that are coming in the back, but like Google Maps doesn't show us what those arcs are not there yet.
Right.
I can picture each of them individually in my head, but I'm not quite sure how they all relate to each other. And so I don't know if that's something that you could potentially work with staff on for future submissions so that we could see maybe like a little bit zoomed out view. Maybe you fall in between the two projects that I'm thinking of, or just what might that connection actually look like? And I do recall that there's quite a bit of open space back here in different shapes. So I'm hopeful that that will work out. And then I can't quite remember what we've done for some of the other projects on Sawyer Road, and maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not, but can you just remind me, Angela, if the town has, I feel like I should also know this, I'm sorry. Do we have a plan for sidewalk construction along Sawyer Road at some point?
Right, I believe it goes though towards cottages at Sawyer.
Right.
Was asked to build it, which actually goes the other direction.
Okay, I
around
know
the
it's
corner.
like there's some pieces of it in
But
different
we,
places.
I know with the last one on this stretch, we, the board, I should say, requested the in lieu fee
The
for
fee.
sidewalk.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
eventually that is the goal, is to connect. We just invested a lot of money on the Gorham Road side.
Right.
And so to eventually have that loop is definitely the intention.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll just add to that, connecting that loop, as Angela said, is identified in the Oak Hill pedestrian study
Yeah,
that was
okay.
done many years ago.
right.
And I think, as Angela just alluded to, the project that was similar to this was sort of a size that it sort of too small, that
Yeah,
had,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
asking them to build it at this point didn't make a whole lot of sense, but we looked at, that's where we have our multimodal account.
sure. And I
That
think
was the
that's,
approach.
I think it's a great use
that
for
time.
that. That's kind of what it's for. That's what I think of.
And I will
Um,
say on our GIS layers, there's the newer streets, while they haven't been accepted, you would see Holbrook and the cottages, and might even see some more general information on there.
Okay.
So, but we can work with them on that.
Great.
too. But just to give you a kind of, can start looking at things and if you have questions.
There was some
Thank
sort of
you.
running race this weekend that was running. They were running down the new trail path sidewalk on Gorham Road and then turning onto Sawyer where there was nothing. So someday that would be great. Anyway, I think that's it. Aside from the street tree topic, I think it would be great if you were able to plant trees along the street here. I recognize that the zoning requirements, I guess when I picture street trees, it's perhaps not, you sort of picture like a corridor of street trees. But I also think that for, single family homes or any home of any kind, really, people just generally seem to appreciate that. And it does seem contextually appropriate given the rest of Sawyer Road. So I would encourage that if you have the space and can make it work utility wise and other, all the other things that you're balancing. That's all I have.
Thank you. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I think what we should do is we should make sure we're consistent with what we did before with the previous, 3 lots, very similar to this. I'm not sure if we required them to have trees in the front or not. We
Yep,
did?
we
Okay,
did,
all right,
yep.
okay. I think it's just to be fair, it should be consistent all the way through. The other thing I was wondering, did they put in a new sewer line on Sawyer already?
Yeah, the sewer line is in.
Now,
It's a
would there
forcing.
be a stub just to this one lot, or would they? you know?
The sewer district doesn't like to do stubs along the way, so they would have to, yes. I can't remember if, it depends on if you guys coordinated ahead with the sewer district. So I guess that would be a question for the applicant.
As far as how many,
On getting a stub when they actually put the sewer line in.
nothing has been done from our standpoint at this
Right.
point.
So if it's speculative, they don't like to
Yeah.
just put in a stub. So they'd have to have, like, if they knew the project was coming, that's a different story. So,
So in this case, let's assume there's one stub for this lot.
yeah, well, there wouldn't be any.
There probably
wouldn't
isn't
be
any,
any.
so
So
they'll
zero.
be tying in. So
Yes.
that will be part of their project. They'll
Yep.
talk with the sanitary district and they'll tie into that
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah. All right. The other thing I recall from the previous development like this is that the public safety required a name for that common driveway.
Yes,
So you have to come up with a name there. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this land that Jen was trying to identify, isn't that with the Scarborough Land Trust right now? Or is that,
I don't know that it's been conveyed as of yet.
that was the intentions of it, wasn't it?
Again, we'll have to take a look if this
Yeah.
backs up to the Holbrook Farm or if it
Mm.
backs up to the cottages at Sawyer. I don't recall offhand either. And I think that's where sort of
Yeah.
having that zoomed out version, taking a look at that and seeing how that all interplays.
Yeah, and I know we spent a lot of time with the cottages and that preservation way, I think it was, as to, easements going across. That was kind of a lengthy discussion on that. Otherwise, I don't have any problem with anything. I'm kind of curious though about the detached garages is, I would think most people would prefer to have them attached. Otherwise, you got to walk out and clean up.
You certainly do that. And I think there's some compromises, I think, in making that, in detaching them. I think the goal for us in not attaching them is that it doesn't feel so tied to their backyards. So to detach them, it also makes it a more approachable scale. If we attach it, then it becomes this kind of monolith of a building that you can shade and shadow, and it just kind of affects the adjacent open space. That if we pull this apart and have it be an open connector, the scale of it feels more pedestrian and welcoming.
I think it's also worth noting that the board isn't approving the buildings, right? When this
Yeah,
comes in,
right.
it's going to be a simple land division.
Mhm.
So makes perfect sense what you're saying. However, whoever buys these will work with our code officer and they could build. So I
Mhm.
just want to be sure we're all very clear on that
That's good.
point, that these layouts are not final. Maybe it's what shows up in the end. I don't know, but it's not part of the board, what the board's really charged with.
All right. No, I'm fine with everything else. I think it's kind of interesting. We may see more of this along Sawyer Road, I imagine.
Hmm.
So
Thank you. Rick?
No, that's why I'd like to go last, and I was nudging Jen to go first because I know she was going to cover some of those things. Well, I don't have really good eyes, so I can't really see that well. No, I think things have been discussed. I think they also mentioned doing a delineation report for the wetlands. So we're going to want to see that. Definitely, but I get the concept. I look at this more like a subdivision without a main road that goes in and out and covers all the lots. And I understand, I understand your layout and why you're doing what you're doing. So, yeah, pending the results of some work on the wetlands testing. Just a question for staff though, because I'm looking, and maybe it's because I'm looking at this as a subdivision. Why didn't we get a site plan or a site analysis and inventory?
So we don't do that. I think you're thinking of when we go through a plan development process.
This wouldn't be considered a planned development,
No, this is
just a subdivision of a
So-
lot.
Right. So
It's-
the site inventory analysis is when a project is in a certain zone of a certain size or certain use, triggers that plan development review
Right.
process, which is that 3-step review process. Subdivision, we will certainly see, as I think is referenced, the wetland delineation, so we have a good understanding of
Yep.
that. A full net residential calculation understanding, so we sure that we have the right number of lots and all that good stuff. But yeah,
Okay, well, that was key then.
Yep.
I got it now.
Yep.
So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Chad?
Yeah, just more of a curiosity question. If the design intent is to upgrade the existing housing to have any consistent features, or knowing that this is just a subdivision, it's just more of a curiosity.
We haven't gotten to that stage of things yet.
All right, thank you. Let me just go back to something a couple of folks have said, and that is a couple of months ago, we had a very similar request and a similar subdivision. And we found out some things as a result of that. One thing we found out is that basically all of the numbers, street numbers on Sawyer Road are taken. So that you're going to have to work with the police, the town police, the numbering people, or addressing, yeah, or with Jay on how to handle that. And the way that was handled, and it's something you can think about, is that 2 of the houses became on a private way, and that was renamed so that wasn't no longer a Sawyer number. The 3rd house took up the original number. So as you're going along, I think you're going to have to take a look at how that works.
Okay.
And as Angela was saying, one of the other things that comes to mind is that there are sidewalks required, or an in lieu fee that goes into the town intermodal fund, the intermodal fund. So when you submit your application, we're going to need really good measurements all the way across the front. And that includes as well places for street trees, not just around the houses, but along the streets. Something else that the planning board frequently requires when you have a development like this, that's abutting a wetland, after you've completed the delineation of the wetland, we generally ask that there be some hardscape that tells people in these houses where the wetland starts, and that therefore there should not be a swing set built on the other side.
Okay.
All of the first buyers know that. But you get into perhaps the 3rd buyer of a house who doesn't know that they can't build further back and
Mm.
into a wetland.
Mhm.
So having either a rail fence or some boulders put in so that people are clear what actually the open ground is and where the wetland stops and ends is important.
Okay.
I had noted the Holbrook Farm and Sawyer, the Sawyer the Sawyer Cottages connections. So you can work with the planning department and take a look at the GIS and see what the potentials are there.
Okay.
As Jay said, we don't actually look at the houses for something like this, detached or attached. This is Maine. I certainly would prefer attached, but that's up to the buyers. And to reinforce what Jen said, we need to know that somebody's going to be responsible for maintenance, especially of the common areas and of the wetlands and of stormwater. And that usually comes through something like a homeowner's document. So you can work with the planning staff and they can help you work your way through that.
Okay.
Rachel, can
Yeah.
I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I just wanted to clarify, because there is an ordinance for private ways, which has very specific criteria, and that is not what we're asking for. There's actually it would be a named driveway. So I just want to make sure you're not heading down a path trying to, because there's others in here that have built a private way and would not be happy to see just a driveway like that named. So I just want to make sure you're following the right ordinance, which you can. talk
And
about.
so
Could
can you
you
clarify?
explain what it is again?
A private way is built to a specific road standard. That is not what we're requesting for that driveway.
What are you instead requesting? If it is not called a private way, it would be called
It would just be a driveway,
just be a driveway.
Yep.
Okay.
but it would just be named. Yes,
Hmm.
and there's specific criteria for private ways that I just don't want you to think you have to build out a whole road.
Thank
That
you
was the whole
for that.
point.
Yeah,
that.
really, the main difference is a private way has a 50-foot wide right of way and it's a built street. And it's
Mhm.
really typically what a lot starts to get its frontage off of. Here, these lots all have frontage along Sawyer. It's just they're gonna have a typical driveway, shared driveway. So it doesn't need to have that 50-foot wide right of way and be built 24 feet wide and with gravels of such and such. And so it's a new, the terminology becomes a nuanced difference,
Hmm.
but it is a very much a different category of use.
Okay.
And it gets a little confusing when it comes to addressing and particularly street signs, I think is where so it's really boiling down into the weeds on it.
All right, thank you. Do you have any other questions
I
of us?
do, yes.
Okay.
So as we talked about the specifics of this open space as it relates to this delineation of what wetlands we determine is back there, what level of detail are you looking for us to get in for the next formal submission?
Jay, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess maybe I didn't quite understand the question, but I guess what typically we'd see is a wetland delineation, so we know where the edge of the wetlands are.
Sure.
And then it really, if the question is about how does this open space correspond to the surrounding open spaces, I think that's where Angela was referencing. Our GIS mapping
Mhm.
can do a good job because those other subdivisions, though they're not built, are shown there. And so I think we can just sort of highlight and say, okay, here's where this open space is, here's where that open space is, and we can see, as you said, obviously this isn't a very big area, but when you start to couple it together with other open, you start to get the good contiguous open space.
Right. Okay.
I think that's really sort of the point you were making, and I think what the board is asking, well, let's just see that.
Yes.
I think we can work with you through our GIS mapping to produce something that will work.
Okay. And kind of expanding on that, for the open space that we're proposing, which is going to come out to 10% of this lot. And Madam Chair, you talked about boulders or a fence that runs along this delineation, I imagine, and Rick talked about expanding this beyond just a circle so that it connects more directly with the three properties. What level of detail, I guess, and call outs of materials and would you like to see in this next submittal? Is it good enough to just say now it's an oval and here's the delineation, or do we go further and we say where the hardscape is and
The delineation more than anything else is to ensure that people don't infringe upon the wetland.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's handled by boulders occasionally. Some cedar rail fence, not all the way across, doesn't have to be, but enough so people can say, this is where the wetland starts. So
Mhm.
we're not going to do anything past this boulder or this fence.
Okay.
And you would simply come to us with a proposal and we take a look at it and say, works. Or perhaps a little more robust over here, a little better delineation over there.
Okay.
Certainly we can share, I think we talked about, there was a similar subdivision that went through. We can show you what they showed on the plans.
I'd like to see
Typically,
that.
it's
That'd
Couple
be,
of delineations on the plans, and as I think the chair just mentioned, if there's an area where there's a particular concern, might be a little more robust, so we can, staff's happy to sort of work with you through that and show you some examples of ways it's worked well in the past.
okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Good.
No, you're good.
No,
Thank you
I think we're
very
good.
much.
Thank you for listening.
Next item, the agenda, Crossroads Holdings LLC request a final subdivision review for Highgas District subdivision, Highgas Parkway, Assessors Map R052, lot number 4. Jay?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. So board members may recall this item. This was before you back at your January 31st meeting. Crossroads Holding is proposing to subdivide a property that is part of the approved master plan of the Town Center North and Highgas Parkway District at the Downs, Scarborough Downs. The proposal consists of predominantly a new street constructing that will connect from Highgas Parkway to the Scarborough Downs Road, thereby creating 2 lots, particularly in that Highgas Parkway district. As I said, this was before you. You provided preliminary approval back at your January 31st meeting. I think with the main element that was still to be sort of figured out was what that connection, once we get across the stream, what's going to look like to Scarborough Downs Road. And that's been shown on the plans at this point. While staff still has some questions about the phasing plan, and really that's more to the construction sequencing than anything else. We feel that the remaining questions that we have based on the submission are items that could be addressed as conditions, and therefore you do have a motion that's been prepared for you this evening, should the board see fit. With that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Bacon.
Good evening. Dan Bacon here on behalf of the Downs and Crossroads Holdings. As Jay indicated, we're excited to be back in front of the planning board for final subdivision review on this Highgas district. Drew Gagnon's here on behalf of Goral Palmer, our design engineer. We're really excited to be close to position to getting started with this leg of infrastructure, really kind of coming in from our third access point, which at the end of the day could be our primary access point into the project. And we actually already have some preliminary interest in this area of the project. And this subdivision's really the key first step is to get the road design approved and the 2 larger lots approved. And then with that, we start construction activity in this construction season, also market those lots, and then those lots will return to the board for further site plan review. So as Jay indicated, this is really to activate the infrastructure and get those lots divided to then have the board review in more detail lot development. So since preliminary, we've worked hard to respond to staff questions and board questions. As Jay indicated, clarify the future connection to Scarborough Downs Road per past approvals, and hopefully position for a final approval with conditions. With that introduction, I'm just going to have Drew walk you through the plans briefly to remind the board of the kind of the key plan elements, speak a little bit to that construction sequencing plan, and then turn it back to you for any questions that you might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer. I'm happy to be here tonight with you folks. So as Dan had a nice introduction there, I'm just going to quickly go through the plan, just a reminder of what was presented back in January, some of the key updates we had, and hopefully send you right off into any questions that you have and hopefully answer any of those. So this is just an overall view that's shown on your screen right here of the downs. The track is in the center of it. Highgas Parkway is on the left side of the plan here. Payne Road, you can see just in the upper left corner. The highlighted red section is the subdivision we're talking about this evening. Zoomed into the layout plan, as you will see, nothing really has changed to the preliminary subdivision. Quickly going over, it's about a 21-acre subdivision. We're proposing 1,200 linear feet of road called Market Street at this time, to be confirmed by addressing in the police department. This subdivision creates 2 lots, one of them in the upper left corner of the sheet in the plan right here. Lot 1, lot 2 is on the bottom right corner, with access provided right in the middle in between reverse curves of the proposed roadway. Really the catalyst for this subdivision is not only activating the town center that Dan mentioned, but is the stream crossing that we're proposing up on Willowdale Brook right here. So we worked rigorously with the DEP to develop a good plan and a good arch culvert there to really restore that crossing to what it should have been 50 years ago. And that timing really needs to happen from July to September. So this subdivision not only activates the town center, draws interest on end users, but it also allows us to construct the stream crossing during a time frame so we're not put behind another year. So that's really the catalyst for this, which is also why we have the phased end just north of Willowdale Brook. I'm going to keep going back and forth here on these slides here, but I wanted to provide a couple updates since the preliminary subdivision. So based on a couple comments, we've extended the turnaround up here north a couple feet to meet the town standard and provide a little more room for the fire truck. So we were happy to do that. Name chosen, we did get Market Street chosen by the development team and hopefully get that approved by police. I got a list here. So I wanted to point out the benches that I know it came up last time. We have one bench proposed by the entrances of lot 1 and 2 right down here, and another one was added and clarified on the plan just north of the Willowdale crossing. We're adding that based on the comments we received, as well as we think this is a good learning opportunity, educational opportunity for kind of what we're doing at the downs here. It can tie into the educational opportunities we're doing south of the development near town center residential. And we're kind of excited to get to work with the town on that, as well as other entities in the town. We did add some dead end signage around the lot 1 and 2 intersection here for in the interim. If anyone's traveling on the road, they understand it's a dead end, at least from the phase perspective, until we connect it. And we provided some stormwater, additional stormwater hydraulic modeling. So nothing on the plan changed, it's just some clarifications we provided, as well as some left turn queuing analysis based on what could possibly go on these lots, just to appease the traffic engineers there in the peer review. And so we have read through all the town comments and discussed them, as well as the peer review comments, and we're happy to address these as part of a conditional approval, and we feel comfortable working that we can get these all addressed. The phasing plan that Dan mentioned earlier on. So this sheet without the highlighted red, green, and blue coloring was provided as an attachment in your application package. This coloring diagram essentially just takes it a step further from a construction sequencing point of view. So blue is what's in front of you tonight minus the lots. It's really what's actually physically going to be constructed out there upon approval. Red would be a subsequent phase. We would need permitting, design, and users to really develop those lots, permitting through the local as well as state applications. So those are a little bit out, but those would be activated with this blue phase getting going subsequent to approval. Green would be the future connection to the Downs Road. That is current per the current master plan. That's what that alignment is showing right now, connecting to the existing Downs Road. And obviously by 2026 per our traffic movement permit, we need to connect it anyway. So that's kind of twofold there, whether it's the master plan, also the dead end policy, and to get a street accepted, as well as our TMP. That's all I have for you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions. Turn it back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. This item is subject to public comment. Is there anyone in the room or online?
There are none online.
Anyone in the room care to make a comment? No, and in that case, comment period is over. And I will turn to the board. Rick Meinking, you're going to have to go and without
No,
looking
'cause I
at
went-
Jen's.
Yeah, I see how
Notes.
you work now, Madam Chair. All right, all right. Now I got to look at Jen's notes. No, I remember this from the last time and you have addressed a lot of the concerns. There's one question I have on the street lighting. How is that going in and where is it coming from? Can you show me?
Yeah, so there's existing overhead wires along Highgast Parkway, and there's a couple poles proposed, and I forget how many we had, but in the center median island for the most part, and then switching to one side of the street once we get past those center median. So we're gonna meter it off one of the poles we're installing for the overhead wires along the south side, and we're gonna meter it through that and up through the subdivision.
Okay, so you're gonna have overhead. You don't know what's in the two lots, but you're thinking you're gonna have overhead power to those two lots and then they go in the ground when they go into the lots?
Correct. So we have overhead power proposed just to the intersection right here, if you will, the
Yep.
two driveway intersections. So on the lot 2 side, it's relatively easy because the overhead power is on that side. So we
Right.
don't have to cross any pavement. On lot 1, we're gonna have the largest size conduit bank we need just to get the stubs and conduit under the road so that we can power
Yep.
lot 1.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it will go under the road.
Yes,
there.
after, for the
Yeah.
services into lots will be
Okay,
underground.
all right. And then the interconnection between the streetlights will all be buried.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Jen, do you want to look at Rick's notes?
I don't think you're right. Yeah, I can't read that far either. Most of my questions, I think that remain outstanding have to do with the intersection at Highgast Parkway. And I know there was some dialogue back and forth from our traffic peer reviewer. But I was just wondering if you could clarify for all of us what will be going in. I think the intent of all the comments was essentially for no one to have to go back and redisturb this pavement for future signal conduits or curb work or ramp cut-ins or anything like that. And so I want to clarify either that's correct or if not, why not, I guess, because it's probably going to be signalized here at some point is my guess.
Yeah, correct. So yeah, all the comments from the traffic peer reviewer as well as the town were relative to just making sure the infrastructure is in the ground. So as you mentioned, we're not digging up what we just put in there for a brand new apron. So construction sequencing wise, we're going to put the road in with the apron and then we're going to do the widening on Highgast Parkway, and they're kind of isolated because we don't have to necessarily connect the two with at least knowing the design, right? So some of the comments were additional conduit that the traffic peer review is recommending we put in. We're happy to do that because we don't want to touch the pavement after the fact anyway. So we're going to add as many as we feel necessary. And then, the traffic peer reviewer, great comments. And we're going to add a couple additional ones in just in case, mast arms are going to change. If there's additional push button crosswalks, we're happy to incorporate that so that in the future, we're really just hopefully never touching this road again. So.
Great, thank you. I assumed as much, but it's always good to check. And then I have a question. So it's clear that you're providing, make sure I'm on the right page here, a sidewalk along, okay, so I'm looking at page, just the layout and utility plan. So sidewalk along the northern side of what will become Market Street, including a ramp at the intersection with Highgast Parkway. And I know there was also a comment about, I think in the future, seeing like a more detailed view of this intersection. But I'm curious where this ramp is going and just how and why we would choose to put in one here now and not others in the name of like not disturbing it later. But I'm just curious if that's envisioned as a crossing across Highgas Parkway or across Market Street or both. And if so, what are we doing on the receiving ends of that? So again, as to not disturb new work.
Yeah, and the intention is to put the two ADA ramps on either side of Highgas Parkway at this
Okay.
time per the comment. We're fine with that, so that if there's any connectivity on the south side of Highgas Parkway, we'll have that. To answer your question, the additional crossing on Highgas Parkway is going to be incorporated in the offsite designs, and we wouldn't be putting in, well, we would have the infrastructure in place, but the actual ability to cross won't be there until it's actually signalized, given the
Sure.
speed of the roadway there. So
Right.
the
yeah.
intention, yes, is to save, and it may never have a north-south crosswalk on Highgas Park, on Market Street
Mhm.
in the future, but having the ability to be there, we can certainly work with the traffic peer reviewer on getting that on the plan so that at least that, or the roadway is not touched in the future if it does get put in, so.
Okay, yep. And then that just gives me another question about how we as a town handle, as a team, we're all a team here. How do we handle crossings in this location until it's signalized? So, ramps are a great way to tell people, hey, cross here, whether or not it's signed or striped even. And there's actually some legalities around that as well, but this is a location that I agree with you. We would actually not want people crossing here without a signal. I wouldn't think. So I don't know, just something to think about. Perhaps you know better than we about what may be the duration of time between this work and a signal coming. It's all things here are moving quickly, it seems, so it might not actually be all that long, but in the event that it is longer, I'll just throw that out there for consideration, because I do think that's a pretty dangerous place for people to be on foot. And then I think the only other question, is DOT doing work on Highgas Parkway sometime soonish? Or am I making that
They were
up?
considering doing some
Paving?
paving that they've pushed off, I think
Okay.
in lieu of looking at all the development that's happening. I
Okay.
think they're gonna hold off.
That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Roger?
I actually have no questions.
Excuse me. All right, Rick.
Well, I don't even know how to follow that up. I'm gonna go with no questions. No, I think you did a good job of planning this out. I've seen it before, and I looked through all the questions that I could possibly ask, and they've all been pretty much answered. I'm curious to see how the whole extension of Market Street and the trails and all that works out, but I know that's for the next meeting, maybe, or the one after that. So yeah, I'm gonna go with almost no questions. I had to talk a little bit.
That's why they pay us these big bucks, so you have to say something. Chad?
Very similar, just very curious on kind of the next steps here and what will be developed as far as the placemaking aspects and the trails.
I do have an observation. I have seen people who are probably from Foley's jogging along Highgas Parkway and then sprinting across it to get back to the building. So if there is a road, folks will figure out how to cross it, whether they really need to or not, I guess. But I have no questions. So, but I do have a draft motion, which I will read. I move to approve the project titled Highgas District Subdivision Lots 1 and 2, proposed by Crossroads Holdings LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 3/16/22 with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the proposal subdivides a 20-acre parcel into 2 lots along Highgas Parkway and is part of the approved Town Center North and Highgas District Master Plan. The project will include construction of a new public street that will intersect Highgas Parkway and eventually connect to Scarborough Downs Road. This application also serves to allow the applicant to begin construction of a stream crossing. Conditions: 1, prior to the recording of the subdivision plan, the applicant shall A, work with staff to finalize the general construction phasing plan and provide the requested erosion and construction details requested in the staff memo dated 4/4/22. B, revise the plan set to show a pedestrian refuge within the proposed island. C, revise the plan set to show a full roadway gravel section to support maintenance vehicles accessing the grassed underground soil filter number 1. D, address the remaining concerns in the traffic solutions memo dated 3/31/22. E, receive final approval for the street name from the police department and shown on the plan. F, receive approval from the Scarborough Sanitary District Board of Trustees. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 2, final design plans for off-site improvements and any occupancy of lots 1 and 2 before all off-site improvements are installed as required by the TMP shall be approved by Maine DOT. 3, prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall coordinate a pre-construction meeting. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is a second by Jen Ladd? Doreen, will you call the roll?
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Rick King,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
and Richard Dupere.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Off you go.
Thank you very much.
Keep us in the loop on that bridge when you do that. I want to see what goes into that.
The crossing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to slow the contractors down so we can all get out there and take a look at it. So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like they really want to do that.
Item number 8, Dunstan Properties LLC requests a site plan review for 5 Stewart Drive, Assessors Map U030, Lot 1707. Jay.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. This is another returning item that the board saw back at its February 22nd meeting. The applicant is requesting a site plan review approval for a 2-story commercial building at 5 Stewart Drive, also known as Building G. This building was shown on the master plan for Dunstan Village, which board members may be familiar with, as previous site plans for buildings have come through the board, such as Dunstan Table and Tap, a hair salon, an office building, as well as some other the residential components on the site. The revised materials show the extent of work, which was sort of the complicating factor. Last time we looked at this, it was just being very clear as to what the existing conditions were and what's new going in. So the applicant's done a nice job of revising the plans in that regards. Also, just as a reminder, this site has a little bit of a complicated history with the DOT and their traffic movement permit. By and large, the town has reviewed the traffic for the full development and are comfortable with it, but the applicant is still working through, I don't know if to call it a revised or a new or a modified TMP with the Department of Transportation due to some administrative hiccups, frankly, on the DOT side of things. But ostensibly, the details have been, we're fairly comfortable with, but we do still need to recognize that that is a condition of occupancy of this building. So with that, as I said, staff, we've reviewed this before. Staff has reviewed the comments. We do have a draft motion for your consideration if you're so inclined. With that, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. And for the developer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Sean Frank. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics. With me tonight is Elliot Chamberlain, the applicant. As usual, Jay did an excellent job in terms of the quick summary. We have worked on the plans. And Jay, maybe the main thing would be the architectural, which is the very end of that whole package. We came up with a specific landscaping plan, which I think was one of the things. We updated the photometrics with Sweeney lighting in terms of the specific lighting fixtures that are out there, called out that the building lights would be controlled by sensors. Added some additional grading, if you will, some additional utility information. Really prepared an existing conditions plan based upon the approved site plans. Thanks, Jay. And address the comments, and again, certainly appreciate staff working with us in terms of addressing the comments from the last time we were here in front of the board. This is the architectural drawing. One of the things was to call out the materials, if you will. He also did provide at least a line of sight, if you will, at 500 feet, showing that, the HVAC units wouldn't be visible. And obviously, as you get closer to the buildings, it becomes less and less visible, chances of it. But again, obviously, we are working through the specific building plans that'll be part of the building permit application, and we'll certainly work with staff. One of the big things that actually been trying to get an additional handicap parking space because of the fact that Stewart Drive is constructed in the relationship, if you will. I really was having an issue with the grades, trying to make it work just in front of the building. But the condition of approval does allow us to work on the northerly side, parking lot, and we think we can certainly work with staff to allow that to work. The other condition we saw there was, again, we basically have Stewart Drive. We have a sidewalk that's pretty well set by grade, if you will. Then we have the building and a patio that's going to come off from that. And the patio is going to be relatively flat. So we have an interface, if you will, between the patio from the building and the sidewalk that actually will increase from 0, if you will, at one end down to about a foot on the other, maybe even close to 1.5 feet. So how we're going to make that transition. And I know we're working with Elliot with that. And we, again, certainly appreciate staff working with us on that. In terms of if that's going to be a small wall, our anticipation is it's going to be like a little wall, maybe a curb line, if you will, with a step or two, and maybe some type of fence to kind of make that transition so that people obviously aren't just kind of stepping off. We did show a couple of benches on there. We did call out for the bike rack. And again, certainly appreciate staff working with us on this. We have the conditions of approval in front of us. If appropriate, we certainly appreciate a conditional approval from the board tonight, Madam Chair. And with that, we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This item is subject to public comment. I will ask futilely once more. Jay, is there anyone online?
No one online.
Anyone in the room? Public comment period is over. Let us start down on my right. Chad?
Thank you for the updates. Looking through, this addresses the signage questions I had earlier, and the benches are certainly appropriate and they should be well received.
We appreciate it. And again, we'll certainly get a little more detail in working with staff in terms of that actual patio sidewalk. And I think that, again, the intent obviously is to have that, a nice looking transition, if you will, there. So again, I think we can come up with something nice and detailed on that as well.
So that's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rick?
I have no questions.
Boy, I don't know. Okay. Roger.
Now what, Roger?
I will comment. It looks good. Nice work.
Thank you, Rick.
Roger.
Can we comment on the elevations? Can we comment on the elevations?
Yes, with site plan, commercial design standards come into play.
What is
We
this,
do
your first
review
day on
buildings.
I just want, I think the building looks, really nice facing Stewart Drive. I'm just kind of curious why you didn't follow the same color scheme on the other sides, especially where you're gonna have those townhouses. You know,
There's a lot of blue already in Dunstan Village. There was a lot of question about how much blue do we keep, how far do we keep going with this? And remember, this building, there'll be another one exactly like it. There'll be a sister of this at one Stewart. So whatever we do for a color scheme here, so we were a little nervous to put too much blue on this building. Dunstan Tap has a lot of blue. The apartments are mostly blue. And if we were to do mostly blue on this, we backed off on some of the blue on this building.
the townhouses, they're a light blue, aren't they?
Yes.
I don't know. I like the two color scheme myself.
Yeah, that certainly the two color scheme. Now this one, a lot of this, it came out a little more tan than it probably is. Obviously, the aluminum windows out front, aluminum frame, commercial glass windows out front will be a black aluminum frame instead of the silver. All the PVC will be white, and then you'll see the blue. So there'll be a lot of white trim on this building along with the windows.
And no, I don't really have any further questions.
All right, thank you. Jen?
So yes, I know, it sounds like you are gonna provide some additional detail, but I also had some questions about how the front, basically what's happening between the front of the parking and the face of the building. And it did look to me like, you've got some grade to make up there, but there was a comment somewhere in the material about providing a railing or a fence, which you also alluded to. And so I'm sure this goes without saying, but I'll just say it anyway. I definitely think there should be, if grade wise, you find yourself in a situation where that's warranted, or you choose to put it, I think it would just make a lot of sense to leave some sort of opening there. And it didn't look like there was any break either in the curbing that was shown on the plan, or in any sort of, I'm not sure if there's a
No,
railing
so
shown, but-
what the idea, there's about a foot of grade difference from one end of the building to the other that currently exists on Stewart Drive in the curb. So you'd have to step up onto the curb.
Right.
So the sidewalk will follow the pitch of the curb, about
Right.
that foot from one end to the other. And then there's about 14 feet from the back of the curb to the face of the building. So we'll have the 5-foot sidewalk, and then we'll have about 9 feet of patio. So at one end, like Sean said, the sidewalk and the patio will pretty much be even. On the other end, there'll be somewhere around 10 to 12 inches, excuse me, of difference. It won't be a continuous fence. We're thinking some type of decorative black metal railing along the front, but there would be gaps in that you wouldn't have to walk around the
Yeah,
whole thing.
okay.
So there'd be sections, but we want to try to put those sections where the step is convenient for somebody. It's not too small of a step and it's not too big of a step.
Yeah, sure. Got it. So it's sort of grade dependent. a little
Yes,
bit.
and
Yeah,
and again, Jen, that's just what we want to work on, is that specific detail. So we have like a 7, so maybe we have 2 gaps with
Yeah.
maybe a 7-inch step here and
gotcha.
and a
You're-
2-step here, so that, it's.
your
it's not-
calculator is getting a workout.
And, and just probably shoot some more grades out there. I think
Yeah.
we're down to the point of really getting very specific between what will be the front of the building and that curb line now.
Okay, great. I had some questions around that as well, about like snow clearing. But it does look like this is all outside of, or that you would be handling this as sort of snow clearing as part of your site maintenance.
There is, and Angela can allude to this, we have a maintenance agreement right now with the town, and I assume this is going to stay this way once the road is taken over by the town, where the town does not plow into the parking spots, so they treat it as if it's right outside of parking spot to outside of parking spot, and then we're responsible for, so they dump all the snow in our parking spot,
You
and
get
then
the
we
fun
clear it all
part.
back out again.
Got it.
But we don't push it back in the road.
Yeah, not very often. But this is a site, and you'll see a lot of sites, a lot of contractors now along with us. have gone to, instead of trucks with plows, you'll see a lot of skid steers with snow blowers. And in a site like this, honestly, it's about the only way you can do it.
Yeah.
The big heavy stuff is done with trucks, but a lot of the fine tuning is done with skid steers with snow blowers, and you can put it in places that you couldn't normally do that with a plow.
Sure. I mean, you can tell just visiting places in the winter where snow has been removed sort of comprehensively like that.
Yeah.
They're always easier to get at and around and things like that. So on behalf of all of us, thanks for doing that. I think my only other comment was it did look like there were still a few inconsistencies between plans. And one that I noticed was that the landscaping plan shows trees along the front of this parking area between the building and in the sidewalk area, but there's no tree wells or anything that are shown on your plan. And I can't remember I don't think there are any like that on the other side of the street. So I was just curious what.
Yeah, I certainly, I didn't have any intentions on putting, because of the sidewalk, certainly we can't put them in the sidewalk with a 5 foot wide. And by the time you have 9 feet, we have benches and we have a fence on one side, you really start to narrow down, even putting a tree well in there so close to the building. And you're really, it's a very selective issue as to what type of tree you can put, how big it can be. So in front of this building with the 14 feet, it really just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Right, Jen, and I think that was more the master landscape plan that
Okay.
originally did propose some tree wells, and right, they're just not gonna work. So you can see we did do the individual now, where we're not showing the tree wells between the curb
Gotcha,
line and the
okay.
building.
Yeah, so the other one that I saw had them shown in the front.
Yeah, it probably was that master plan.
Yeah, because again, I included the master plan, and that obviously was kind of setting everything associated with it.
It's dated
Um,
2016, Jay.
But my main point of that was really in terms of the overall parking at the end of the day.
The only other question I had was that it just seems a little bit, I'm curious why you're doing concrete sidewalk and patio area in front of the building, but switching to sort of a relatively short area bituminous as you approach the entrance to the parking lot to the north. And, obviously it makes sense to have that continuity in front of the building, but I'm curious if you just aesthetics really, if you might entertain continuing that material just to the crosswalk.
That actually will be concrete to that road. It doesn't switch to bituminous until you get to the other side of that road where you're starting to actually go down Stewart into the residential area, and you've actually left. That's where the line is between technically Dunstan Village and Dunstan Crossing.
Okay. It's kind of a small amount to pave
But
anyway.
So-
That's a good pickup, though. Jim.
So I'll have to talk to Sean about changing those plans later.
Fine. That's all.
One more detail will take care of Jeff.
All right, thank you. Rick?
Just to note, I was gonna say that. I saw that. But now I want to just mention, on the parking, is there gonna be signage that says these parking spots are reserved or for the patrons of this building?
No, they're not.
Because I can see where Dunstan Tap and Table will be filling those up.
I could see it too. The point really is you see more is, when's open and when's not.
Well, I agree there.
The
but
restaurant,
there's-
obviously their busiest time is going to be dinner, if you will. I mean, certainly they have a lunch crew
Yeah,
that
but if
goes on as
4
well.
o'clock happy hour comes along and you got professional people still working in an office and they may have a client that comes in and now they got to go and find a parking spot.
If it sounds like you've been out there.
I have. I like the restaurant. It's
Yeah.
very good.
When you pull into the backside of this building, up against the parking spots, up against the line between Dunstan Village and Dunstan Crossing, you'll see those basically never get used.
Mhm.
All of those, in the same with the row up against Route 1, are for these two buildings. This building and the one that eventually will come back in for 1 Stewart. So all of those spots. So we would certainly work with the tenants to say employees would park farthest away
Right,
in those
right, yeah.
spots. And we try to do that with Dunstan Tap, and the same with the salons, is to have their employees park furthest away. But at some point, when everything gets built out here, there's going to be some times, but certainly like Sean said, we envision these buildings to be mostly daytime.
Mhm.
Upstairs will be office, mostly daytime hours. Dunstan Tap is closed Mondays and Tuesdays, and from what I understand, that certainly isn't going to
But
change.
that's right now. I'm looking in the
Yeah.
future. It may
Yes.
be a different restaurant
Yep.
someday, and it could be a breakfast and lunch only.
Yes.
You never know. It could be a
Yep.
diner.
Yep.
So it was what I was trying to lead to is I'm concerned about no handicap really close to the main entrances. They'd have to cross the Stewart Drive if they park in the two that is allocated
Right.
for
I
the
think
restaurant.
under the conditions, the way they were written up gives us the flexibility, right, where Jay is showing those spots to the north of the building.
Mhm.
One of those, I would envision the one closest to Stewart Drive, right there. So that you can pick up, because the volume of traffic through there is extremely light. The road in front of the building to the Route 1 side of that building gets used the most for the residents to get back out to Route 1. So right there. So where Jay was showing the parking spot, it has extremely light traffic. And that makes sense. But like Sean said, we were really struggling with height of the
I
building, getting
know.
grades.
Yeah.
We really wanted to pick the building up. And the more we picked it up, the more the problem became. It was getting to the point where we were basically burying the building in the ground.
That's what I was
Mhm.
concerned about. I really didn't.
I understand. And I know it's a,
And we just
I just
didn't.
needed to ask that because I wanted to make me feel better.
Yeah.
That there's a reason for it.
And I want the board, and unfortunately, again, when you look at the master plan for some reason just didn't have one directly in front of this, and now we're kind of, I don't want to say stuck with it, but living to it to a certain degree. And like I
Yeah.
said, I'm just concerned about sinking that building down. So, but again, if you let us work with staff, I'm sure we can find an acceptable spot. on-
Absolutely. I want you to work with staff and figure it out and just make sure that
We'll find a spot close.
you'll have accessibility, because we need to make sure that's being done.
Absolutely.
And then finally, the screening for your rooftop units will be something you can work with staff on. I get that.
Yeah, and we did. You'll see on the plan, the architect showed a sight line from
I-
500 feet away. So the roof, the parapet wall is about 30 inches above the roof deck. So you literally would have to be 650 away from the building to ever just begin to see the top of the rooftop unit. So we don't think screening is going to be needed. Obviously, he shows them very tall right here, but you'll see he shows the sight line from
Well, depending on what you're going to put up there for a makeup air, I'm assuming these are makeup air units.
Yep. HVAC units, makeup air units. Yep.
If you go with the slim VRF kind of things with an ERV in there, you're going to reduce the size of
Yes,
those.
that is correct.
So I'm encouraged that maybe you are going to do all electric in this
We've
building.
talked to the HVAC contractor about this, and this is new to me, so I'm learning as we go. And remember, we're trying to plan a building around a tenant that's taking up, about a third of the entire building, and hoping we can guess right as to who's going to be there and
Mhm.
what their needs and uses are going to be. Is it going to be 5 more tenants to fill the rest of the building, or is it going to be 1? So trying to plan what you're talking about,
And that
thinking
makes a
about who-
perfect sense then, because
Yeah.
those are all scalable.
they're scalable.
See?
Yes, they are.
So there's logic to the madness sometimes when you're scratching your head.
I keep telling myself that. Anyway, so.
And then, well, that's great. I'm encouraged to hear that. And it's certainly within, again, when this was considered way back when, we didn't have the comprehensive plan we do today. And part of our concern with the built environment is that we do things a different way, a more sustainable and resilient way.
But we did, the building being 88 by 44, the units are set pretty much dead center of the building to try to minimize any sight view. But if they do end up becoming a unit that sits at a physical height that doesn't meet that sight line to hide them, then certainly there are plenty of options out there.
Oh, and there's plenty of options. You can
for
put them on the
screening.
ground too, and you can take care of the ground floor and nice little buffers with some shrubs.
Yeah, we
and
don't
you
we
won't
don't
see
have a
it.
lot of, I would love to, but we have very, very little space on the ground. And they are,
I could find-
we learned at the restaurant, they're not the easiest things to hide, and the sound of them. And so I'd much prefer them be on the roof.
Oh, well, you can put them on the roof too.
Yeah.
I was just trying to say on the downstairs, you could do some on the ground level, and then upstairs in those spaces, you could use the rooftop units.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But no, if you can keep from having to spend all that money on a natural gas line going in there, you're gonna do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you for letting me go on.
That's okay. You've suffered enough tonight from Jen hiding her notes. Actually, I have no more questions.
Can I just add one last comment?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I just want to reinforce a point that Rick made, which is about the location of that accessible parking space. And I fully appreciate grading challenges and how and where to cite those. But I do think it's really important that they be that we have one added for this building. First of all, I will say that. And secondly, that it be as close to the front of the building as possible. And particularly if you are, I think you're looking at a physical therapy tenant here.
Yes.
So among maybe other things who, sounds like to be determined. And so I just, ADA requirements are very clear in terms of grading and width of this, and it has to be painted this way. But also those amenities, those requirements, they're not amenities, the requirements, really should be convenient and not inconvenient for folks getting here. So I say that recognizing that you have some grading challenges here, but maybe consider a slight shift in all those angled parking spaces down a little bit more to see if you can utilize the end of the sidewalk area that you were talking about being flush with the patio. And maybe that's like a good way to get that spot in. But I do think it's important to have those prominent so that someone doesn't think that they have to, the only accessible spot visually that they're seeing up front is on the other side of the road. And then obviously wherever that ends up, making sure that there's a fully compliant route from that space into the building. I know that you know
Understood. And again, and we hear you loud and clear. I will say is, as you're coming in, there is a row of parking on the right-hand side that does have a couple of handicap. Now, again, it's a little offset. There's a lot of handicapped accessibility. There's a lot of handicapped spaces there. Unfortunately, we just don't have one right in front of this building, which again, I hate to say it, I wish I'd really seen when we were looking at the master plan originally, because it certainly would have made sense, but I think we can certainly work out something to get it. So it does work and it is accessible, and at the same time, doesn't make it just look like it's, completely convoluted to get from point A.
Yeah, we certainly spent a fair amount of time on site, myself, one of my employees, Sean, shooting more grades than I care to, and trying to literally play with inches here and there. And the other problem we have is this site is, you're so limited on space at each end of the building. If we had 30 more feet, we almost could have sunk the building, and then we already are collecting the water in the grass. But dealing with 6 feet from the edge of the building to the edge of the existing sidewalk on each end of the building and the dumpster on the other end, and then trying to meet the ADA grades, it almost is impossible. I will say on the site, we're already over the recommended, we have to have a certain percentage of ADA, where I won't say double that, we're about 50% more than what was asked on the overall site, and those are already there and painted. So like Sean said, we're certainly not taking this issue lightly, but it's a strange situation in this one case to try to make this one spot work right out front. So we're trying to come up with an alternative to be as safe and still be as close as possible all at the same time.
Jen? Yes, sir. Okay. I have a draft motion. I move to approve the project titled Dunstan Village 5 Stewart Drive, proposed by Dunstan Properties LLC, as depicted on the plan set prepared by Sebago Technics dated 3/21/22, with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the project will involve construction of Building G a 3,872 square foot, two-story building. The first floor will be used for retail and the second floor used as office space. The surrounding site is built out with parking, landscaping, and stormwater management infrastructure, as was approved in the 2015 approved master plan for Dunstan Village. Conditions. 1, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall, A, submit materials to the town demonstrating adequate screening of any HVAC or ventilation systems. B, submit revised plan sets showing the handicap parking spaces in front of or to the north of Building G to ensure patrons do not need to loop around the site to access the angled parking at Dunstan Tap and Table. C, revise the plan set to add a detectable warning panel to the proposed sidewalk located at the rear of the proposed Building G. D, provide Portland Water District approval for Building G, as the previously provided ability to serve letter indicates individual project sites will require separate approvals. E, provide Scarborough Sanitary District Board of Trustee approval. F, pay the traffic impact fee of $17,441. This includes $11,216 for Dunstan Corner, $3,960 for Highgas Parkway Route 1, and $2,065 for Oak Hill. G, provide plan details for curb/wall with railing proposed to be installed between the sidewalk and concrete patio, as noted in the Woodard and Curran memo dated 3/31/22. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 2, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall, A, install landscaping as discussed along Route 1 north of Stewart Drive. B, provide the final signed and approved TMP from Maine DOT. 3, prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall coordinate a pre-construction meeting. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Roger Beely. Doreen, will you call the roll, please?
Rachel Henriksen.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Rick King,
Yes.
and Rick Perry.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We appreciate your time tonight.
Item number 9, staff report.
Sure, just going to give a quick update on two things. One is a workshop that's coming up with council this Wednesday on electric vehicle charging provisions that are being considered for the ordinance. This is coming through our sustainability committee. There's been discussion with the ordinance committee, which is a subset of council, and they asked it to be workshop with the full council. So that is occurring this Wednesday evening. If anyone is interested, that will be live, in person and virtually. So something like that. Sure. I believe it's actually either 5:30 or 6 start. Yep, it'll be a little bit earlier, but you can check online on the town's calendar. We'll have the exact time for those that are interested. The other thing I'd just like to note, board, as we typically do, update you on pre-construction meetings we've had. And there was a pre-construction meeting between, since the last meeting for Pat's Pizza. So expect that to get underway fairly soon. That's all I have. I don't know if Angela had anything else to.
All right, 11, minor development reviews, staff review. Excuse me, no administrative amendment report. Is there
Well,
one?
We don't have one, so it's. good to
Okay,
skip
so
right
it's
to 11. So you're on
skip right over
target.
to 11.
Yep, 2 items to just let folks know about. One is a site plan approval to construct a 3,800 square foot accessory building as part of a landscape business that's looking to establish at 109 Pleasant Hill Road. This is in the industrial district. And it's really, as I said, it's an accessory building that's gonna have electrical, but it won't have any other utilities, plumbing or water or anything like that. They're really just gonna store materials in there. So that is under review. The other is Frozen Pipe Properties LLC at 2 Washington Avenue. This may sound familiar to the board as it was approved back in October by you all. However, at that time, the applicant was looking to do an addition to the existing building and then a new additional building, a second building on site. At this time, they're taking the second building off the plans and just doing the addition due to business reasons. And so we are underway of reviewing that and just being sure any site modifications still address stormwater and lighting and all those other concerns. So those are the two that I have to update you on.
Thank you. Number 12, correspondence. I have seen correspondence coming through on Costco. So presumably that will, once Costco submits, we will see all of that correspondence. But the town council has been receiving correspondence and I've seen some of it. So I guess that's about it. Have you been receiving correspondence on that too, Jay?
Yes, we've been receiving some, and as you just noted, we typically sort of hold those for when the applicant comes back before you. We'll provide that at that time.
All right, thank you. Planning board comments. Let's start this end. Chad?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick? Roger?
Yeah, just have a question regarding the comments on Costco. Does the applicant actually see those? Or do they see them when they're actually coming? You know,
Yep, no, we typically share those with the applicant when they're on the agenda and when we send out our staff comments and all those sorts of things.
okay.
Yep.
Jen?
I just jokesters. And this may be something that perhaps we talk about a little more in depth, maybe at transportation committee level, but just for everyone else here, I just thought I would throw it out there. But this piece of the Downs project, and we've had a lot of activity come in relatively recently on Highgas Parkway, and which is challenged for us because I know that it's a DOT roadway. But it just is very clear to me that it will not be very long before this stretch of roadway is very different than what it is and has been of late, which is extremely wide, extremely fast, and without very many opportunities for people to turn on or off of it. You know, it's sort of highway-like in that way, not a lot of on or off ramps, if you will. But as we and other projects come online, entering onto this stretch of roadway, and, you know, through DOT's careful guidance, like I know that they're chiming in on driveway locations, for example, and things like that. But it just seems like in the not so distant future, this will function differently than it has in the past. And so I'm just curious, I'm thinking about that as I see all these projects come in, like, whoa, we're adding a left turn lane. So somebody's gonna come, you know, driving down from the interstate that they just got off of, and maybe they've done that 1,000 times, but not too far from now, there's gonna be people stop taking a left turn. And just a lot more activity, turning activity in particular. So I'm just sort of curious long-term, what the vision is for this stretch of roadway. I'm pretty sure I can know what DOT's vision is for it. And I certainly have a slightly different version of that in my head. But I guess, you know, we kind of looked at it in very granular ways tonight, where the new access to the Downs property will be here. And, you know, there's some talk about a signal and crossings, But, I thought your comment was very interesting, Rachel, about seeing people running out here. And I think we should expect more of that. And I'm not sure that we're prepared for that, or that we can't do better in terms of how we're thinking about this space being safe for all people, not just people walking or biking, but even in vehicles. Like I think the reduction in speed and the uptick in activity for people, even in their cars turning on and off of here, is going to be a little jarring for a little while. And so I don't know, just as we see other projects come in and we're always talking about, well, what are they doing offsite? Do they pay for sidewalk frontage along Highgas Parkway? Are we going to put in sidewalk here or not? Or what other facilities might be best used in this space? And again, fully challenged by, DOT would be a big player in the conversation as well, but I just thought I'd share those thoughts. So.
Thank you, Jen. Rick?
Well, I feel comfort in knowing that you're part of the transportation committee and you'll get it all figured
I
out.
really know what the answer is.
Well, good luck with that. I don't have anything, Madam Chair.
I am on the Parks and Conservation Land Board, and the Land Trust has recently been a lot more proactive in reaching out. And there are actually 3 sites that are going to be coming before us pretty soon. One of them is Payne Road. And I don't know if you noticed going north at one point on Payne Road near the Nonsuch River on the left, there was a sign there that said auction. The land was up for auction. The Land Trust has bought that. And has bought another piece of property along Payne Road, and has come before the land board with a request for assistance in buying the property in between the two. So there is likely to be an extensive part of Payne Road that's going to be under conservation. Now, it's very much wetlands along there, though there is one upland area along the street that's going to be the access, and trails will be built through there. But the Libby, excuse me, I don't know why I keep calling it Libby. That's the Libby property. The Nonsuch River, now the Land Trust is taking an awful lot of ownership of that river area. So that's both going to slow down some of the development along the Payne Road and put a lot more into conservation. It's all going to be considered part of Warren Woods, even though some of it's on the other side of Warren Woods. And then there are a couple of other pieces of property that have not yet come before us. So there is an increasing effort to preserve public lands. And I think the more we take a look at what's out there and the connections, that to my way of thinking, that's kind of part of our job, is to start also looking at the connections as we were starting to look tonight, as a good way to ensure a continuity of open space for the town and for the residents. So there's nothing else. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Record time. No, nobody wants.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. All right. Motion to adjourn from Rick Meinking. Is there a second? Don't make me wait, please. Second from Jen Ladd. All in favor? Doreen, call the roll.
Rachel Henriksen.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
Rick Meinking.
Yes.
Richard Dewberry.
Yes.